So in this video, I'll be looking at a much neglected area in tailoring, the back of your suit jacket. So here I am today in Mark Powell's tailor shop in Soho in London, and I'll be looking at some of the style options available for the back of your suit jacket. This is, to me, a very much neglected area. As a stylist, as a menswear designer, we're always talking about the front of a jacket, and of course we are. Is it single-breasted? Is it double-breasted? We talk about shoulders, we talk about lapels, we talk about pockets. Yet half of your suit is behind is at the back, and being a bit thoughtful and having a bit of design ideas can really elevate your look, and it's something to consider, particularly if you're going down the made-to-measure or the bespoke route. When I first got into the trade, there was probably more variety off the peg. There were the three main options, and if you Google it and you go to those terrible menswear websites, they'll say there are three options available: centre vent, side vent, or no vent. So let's cover those first. The side vent was very much associated with traditional English tailoring. So when I worked in Selfridges, the brands that would have side vents would be brands like Austin Reed, Aquascutum, Gibbs and Hawkes, Chester Barry. They would have been the side vented brands. Centre vents you used to see on sports jackets, so on your tweed jackets, particularly the 3-button tweed jackets, you would see a centre vent, and then the fashion brands would have been ventless. So the Italian brands at the time were people like Valentino, Cerruti, Giorgio Armani. They would have been ventless. So it was very much, ventless was seen as being younger and fashionable in that Italian style. Side vent was seen as being conservative and old-fashioned, and centre vent was seen as sporty. The other area you would often see centre vents was in American tailoring. Where I worked in Selfridges, we were very close to the American Embassy, the old American Embassy. It's now moved. And the American guys would come in the shop and you'd instantly recognise them in their sack blazers with their centre vents. It was very much an American look. I remember the menswear buyer commenting he went to a drinks reception at the American Embassy, and he was saying there were people there in dinner suits with centre vents, and he found that quite distasteful. And although there is some truth in the idea of the side vent being classic English and the ventless being more fashion, if you go back to the sort of the 40s and the 50s, a lot of Savile Row suits and a lot of traditional suits, particularly if you see it in sort of movies in the era, were in fact ventless. So the idea of ventless being fashionable, although it isn't strictly true. Also in that era, and up until probably the 2000s, it was always considered absolutely correct to wear your dinner jacket ventless, and to have vents on a dinner jacket was seen as a slight mistake. Also, I remember going to, when I first had my suits made, and I went to a ex-Hackett tailor, and they were talking about a 3-button jacket has to go with a centre vent, and a 3-button with a side vent was considered a bit of a mistake. So those were the rules I kind of picked up in the early 90s, and I thought, well, those are my three options. But then obviously when I got into tailoring and I got more into the style side of things and started doing some research, I learned there are more options. The first thing to remember, of course, and there's been some comments from you guys asking me to go into this, is how the length of the vent is important. So on a centre vent, for example, if you're having a hacking jacket, now the hacking jacket is a high buttoning, waisted and skirted garment, it's not uncommon for the centre vent to measure 12 inches. And what that does is it actually it helps the tailor create quite a skirt to the garment, so it flares out at the hips, which is the classic hacking jacket hourglass shape. On side vented suits, if you're going to the more sort of 60s, slightly shorter fit, which done properly is still an elegant look, and I'm not talking about those horrible, stupid, overly short, tight jackets that have plagued the high street for the last 2 decades. I'm talking about the slightly shorter jacket. To do a slightly shorter vent is in balance. So if you're going for a longer jacket or a shorter jacket, your vent length should be in proportion. If you have your suits made, your tailor will take into account how tall or short you are before you pick how long the vent should be. But I would say in the last decade, where Italian clothing has become a lot more like English clothing, and they started adding in their ready-to-wear collection side vents and side adjusters and pocket flaps, we're pretty much seeing a blanket range of side vents across all tailoring, and it's hard to find anything, whether it's fashion or whether it's high street or whether it's top-end Savile Row, not having a side vent. It's almost as if that's the only option available. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a side vent. I mean, be perfectly honest, most of my suits and jackets do have side vents, but it seems a shame that we are completely neglecting some of the great options available. Here at Mark Powell, he often uses the back of the jacket to just put a little bit of extra twist of style into his garments, and I've actually got the same cloth here in 2 different options. So this is in the classic deep side vent, which is, if you're a difficult figure, always, you know, it can be quite easy to fit. It gives you access to your pockets, it's elegant, but no one really notices it. And here we have something which I very much associate with Mark Powell. He's been doing this certainly as long as I've been following his taste, and that is the centre inverted pleat. So instead of having a slit, it's actually a pleat that opens up. Typically it's centre. It works similar to a centre vent. In fact, it gives you a lovely skirt to the garment, but it just has a real bit of style to it. Mark has been doing this since the 90s, just as a nod to those who know tailoring, that it just shows it's a custom garment. It's not something you've necessarily found off the peg. This garment here also has a stitched down half belt, which is a supremely elegant combination. It's a style signifier. It just adds a little bit of swagger to a classic suit. And here I have a couple of examples of probably my favourite backs of a style of a lounge suit, and that's a panelled back, similar to what you'd see on a morning suit or a frock coat or an evening tail suit, where it has panels. Now this is a fantastic feature, very rarely seen in tailoring outside of formal wear, but it's such a useful element. It gives your suit a very good non-office look. So I've talked about that quite a lot, where people want suits nowadays which aren't going to be for corporate business wear. They're perhaps for occasions, and if you want to get a lounge suit perhaps for your own wedding, having this sort of feature just elevates it from being the everyday. Technically as well, by having the more seams, it means you can put a little bit more shape into it. So if you like that hourglass shape and that sort of waisted and skirted look, this really gives it a really lovely shape. For the front of these jackets, now of course the style of jacket you have this with. Now this is with a typical long centre vent, and this side here has a side vent, both with panelled backs. The style of jacket you would put this with would need to be more structured. This isn't the back you put on an unstructured, soft-shouldered blazer. This is something you want on the back of something with a proper shoulder and quite an important front. By important front, I don't know, it would suit something with a decent bit of style to it, because I think if you're going to have something with such an impact on the back, you need to match it with the front. The suit I'm wearing myself is a neo-Edwardian style with the 4 buttons and pocket flaps and a square front edge, and my suit has that shaped back, so I think the front and back have to balance. It's, in the way I'm wearing it, it's got that slightly archaic nod to the Edwardian era, and if you look back into fashion plates from the sort of between the wars when the lounge suit was coming through, a lot of these details were still prevalent in tailoring whilst we were sort of moving into what was seen as the modern lounge suits. So it's a great detail. I love it on a black tie evening suit. So if you like vents for black tie, this detail is absolutely spot on, because that real lovely nod towards white tie. But also if it's for an occasion suit, you want your suit just to have that non-office look, this is definitely something to consider. This style of panel back is very rare to find off the peg. Mark Powell always does a small selection available to buy. Of course, he does it made to measure and bespoke. You're very rarely going to find this in the high street. It'd be quite tricky even to find made to measure. And even, I would say, quite conservative bespoke tailors will probably try and talk you out of doing it. But I think it's a great detail, particularly for a formal wedding suit, or if you just want to be a little bit different. And whilst panelled backs and inverted pleats are for the more adventurous dresser, my conservative customers are really coming round to the idea of having some design detail on the back of their overcoats. This is the classic Marshall overcoat, and it's got some great detail. It's got this lovely half belt, this deep inverted pleat, and even a pleat across the back of the shoulders. Now this has a lovely practical nature, but when it fits over your suit, it has a bit more movement to it, a bit more comfort to it. You don't feel sort of tucked in, you can still move your arms, and it's got a lot of swagger to it. It's got a lovely shape to it. I think overcoats should be dramatic, and this just adds to the drama. So even our more conservative customers nowadays are appreciating that sort of detail on the back of their overcoats and their top coats if they're not quite ready to do it on their lounge suits. Well, if you've made it this far, you're obviously a little bit of a menswear nerd, and you're probably a subscriber, and if you're not a subscriber, you should be. If you have any comments on the backs of jackets, anything you're not too sure about, you want some advice, put it in the comments below and hit that subscribe button.